That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, guys, I am so excited to dive into my favorite offense that we are going to be targeting in almost every single fantasy football draft. But in case you have yet to hear, I have possibly the biggest announcement that we have ever had on this channel. We are officially partnering with Underdog Fantasy for the 2021 fantasy football season. Now, what this means for you is it means you have so many great opportunities to play in leagues with myself and everybody else that is a member of the Flock community. Now, all you have to do is go to the description of the video, click that link to download and join Underdog Fantasy, make a deposit, and if you deposit as a Flock member, you are going to get an additional $25 on whatever deposit you have, and I'm going to be live streaming every single night from here on until we get to the start of the football season. And in those live streams, I'm going to try to kick off 3 to 4 fantasy drafts every single stream where you are going to be drafting with me. I'm probably going to be making fun of your picks. You're probably going to be telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about, and you'll probably be right at the end of the day. But please, guys, seriously, there's nothing you can do that would support this channel more than going down there, playing with me on Underdog Fantasy, and using code FLOCK. But that should be it. What we're going to be doing in this video is we're going to be diving into my favorite offense to draft this season. And no spoilers here. It is going to be the Los Angeles Rams. And I don't want to waste too much time. I'd rather just get into it here. And with the Rams, obviously, the number one thing changing here is going to be the quarterback position. And you don't need me to tell you that quarterbacks drive everything in the NFL. They drive everything in fantasy. Very rarely are you actually going to get a top producer from an NFL team that can be at the wide receiver position, be at the running back position from a league bottom offense, because we know that offenses, when they have that elite level quarterback, that quarterback is going to sustain so many great fantasy players from tight end to wide receiver to running back. Look at Dallas, look at the Chiefs, look at the Seahawks. We know the offenses that you are trying to target with the best quarterbacks in the NFL and what it means for you in fantasy. Now, on the other hand, yes, of course, you'll always be able to find yourself a player like Terry McLaurin from last year, a player like James Robinson from last year that they go through, and despite having a league bottom offense, they're productive despite of it. But I think here with the Rams, we're actually going to see a team that went from some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL with Jared Goff over to some of the, if not, I don't want to say a top 10 quarterback, but actually, yes, let's just say it. Matthew Stafford, a top 10 passing quarterback at the NFL level. We're going to dive into exact numbers why and why you should be going through targeting this offense. And let's start it off with the quarterback. Let's start it off with Matthew Stafford. And if we go over and we look at our rankings right now, we actually have Matthew Stafford ranked as the quarterback 10 in fantasy this upcoming season. So if you compare this to Underdog Fantasy, like I said, guys, we're going to be drafting on Underdog exclusively this year. And I think that Underdog Fantasy, that's going to be the best place to find our ADP, because the best thing about Underdog is all of those drafts are for real money. If you're using a sleeper or something that doesn't necessarily have real money drafts and you're trying to use that ADP, that's garbage, because your little cousin who's 13 years old that doesn't really know what he's doing, he's drafting on that. He's not spending money on it. You want to make sure that you're actually looking at the sites where people are tuned in, people know what they're going on, and it's not just drafting against a computer, because obviously that is garbage. But here with Matthew Stafford, he's going as the quarterback 13 in Underdog drafts. So I think you are getting a discount if you are going and selecting him in that range. And it's really easy to see with Stafford. This is a quarterback that is still only 33 years old. I know he seems like he is way older than that, but the thing is, he just came into the NFL at an extremely young age. He was drafted in 2009 with the first pick overall, and he started right away. So, of course, if you play over a decade in the NFL, it's going to be surprising to hear that you're only 33 years old. But yeah, Stafford, still very young for the quarterback position. And if you go through and if you look at the past few years for Matthew Stafford, it's been really, really up and down. And what I want to do is I want to look at the past 2 seasons that we have for Matthew Stafford and look at the sharp differences and see if we can identify why. So in 2019, you actually had Matthew Stafford miss half the season due to an injury, but before he actually got injured, he played 8 games, and in those 8 games, he was fantastic. He was MVP type level Matthew Stafford, where he came out, he averaged over 21 fantasy points per game. he averaged over 300 passing yards a game. Most importantly, 9.1 adjusted yards per pass attempt. That's how you can really get a good idea of what kind of quarterback talent you have. I mean, we just uploaded a video where we went through and we talked about how bad the Denver Broncos offense is going to be this upcoming year, how we're avoiding. And I talked about Teddy Bridgewater being a bottom 5 quarterback in the NFL. And so many people were coming at me going, completion percentage, completion percentage, completion percentage. My God, is there anything worse to evaluate a quarterback on? No, look at adjusted yards per pass attempt, a way better measure. And also you see him have almost 2.5 passing touchdowns a game. Now, of course, Stafford never going to be a rushing quarterback. That's not going to surprise anybody. But being a top 5 quarterback this season was extremely impressive in that you go over and you actually look at, who he was throwing to. His top options in this offense, Kenny Golladay is his wide receiver 1, which of course, that's fantastic. You love to see Golladay there. But then Danny Amendola, not prime Danny Amendola, who wasn't that great to begin with, but 34-year-old Danny Amendola was his wide receiver 2 in targets. Then you have Marvin Jones. Then you have rookie season TJ Hawkinson. We know Hawkinson is literally nothing his rookie year. He was injured the majority of the time of it. And also rookie tight ends never produce. And J.D. McKissick. So he was throwing the ball to nobody. And despite that, Matthew Stafford had 9.1 as his adjusted yards per pass attempt. This was only behind Ryan Tannehill, who we all know that was so efficient at the end of 2019. And in the top 5, you also had Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Drew Brees. Now in 2020, yes, he saw a massive fall off. But a big thing that I want to focus in on with 2020 is, he goes down to being the quarterback 24 in points per game, only 250 passing yards a game. His yards per pass attempt, at least adjusted yards per pass attempt, dropped down to 7.9. Honestly, I think that this is impressive for Matthew Stafford if you consider the context behind it. Because we go through and we look at the receiving situation that you actually have in Detroit. Marvin Jones, the wide receiver 1 there in targets. A second-year tight end in TJ Hawkinson. Yes, I love Hawkinson, but he can't be your second best option in an offense when it's the second year that he's actually in his NFL career. Then Danny Amendola, who's 35 years old at this point. And then a running back in DeAndre Swift. Also, you had Quintez Cephas and Marvin Hall both getting over 30 targets. And this is mainly because he had no Kenny Golladay all season. He had nobody to throw the ball to. Yet despite of that, he was able to post over 250 passing yards a game. He had a 7.9 adjusted yards per pass attempt, which was 12th in the NFL, directly behind Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, directly ahead of Phillip Rivers, Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert. And I think that's actually very impressive considering the context behind it. You see exactly what the Rams think in terms of going out there and getting an upgrade over them by trading away Jared Goff and 2 future first-round picks. So yeah, Stafford, I think, is going to come in. He's going to crush his ADP, and he's going to elevate the passing options in this offense at the same time. So this is pretty much the main thesis on why you're wanting to attack this Los Angeles Rams offense. And now going over to the wide receivers. Now, with our wide receiver 1, we are going to have Robert Woods. We have been high on Robert Woods all offseason now. And I think that, people are kind of jumping on board given the fact that Cam Akers no longer being in this offense possibly makes it where this team looks to throw the ball more. And if you look at Robert Woods right now, we have him as our wide receiver 12. And over there on Underdog, he's actually risen up drafts as of late because those Underdog drafters are very sharp. They know what they're doing. And they see that Cam Akers is not here. They're giving more targets to Robert Woods. They've moved him up to wide receiver 15. But he's still behind Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans. Personally, I can't draft any of those players over Robert Woods. I'm going Robert Woods over all of those guys. And if we go through and, I'm sorry, I actually need to apologize. Robert Woods is my wide receiver 11. After the Michael Thomas injury, we bumped up Robert Woods 1 more spot. So I'm sorry for that correction that we had earlier in the video, but he's still a wide receiver 1. We're actually moving him up further than what we had. And with Woods, I know this is another player that seems like he's been in the NFL forever, only 29 years old though, so still in his prime. And you go through, you look at the past 3 seasons, you are going to have a very hard time finding a wide receiver as consistent as Robert Woods. In 2020, he was the wide receiver 13. In 2019, he was the wide receiver 14. In 2018, he was the wide receiver 16. And with this, what we've actually found is, this should be put into context because if you look at these numbers, while yes, they're impressive, it's with Jared Goff. And I know Jared Goff was a decent quarterback back in 2018, but in 2019, 2020, nobody's going to argue that Jared Goff was an above average passer at the NFL level. Nobody's going to argue that Jared Goff was a league average passer at the NFL level. So if you put this into context, that Robert Woods has been a high-end wide receiver 2 throughout the past 3 years with Jared Goff. Then all of a sudden, Cam Akers gets injured. We can assume that now with no Todd Gurley, with no Cam Akers, this team's going to be more pass happy. And at the same time, they get Matthew Stafford to come in. I mean, we're going to give them more pass attempts per game and a higher efficiency mark with those pass attempts. Robert Woods, I think that honestly, it may be a little bit conservative to have him at wide receiver 11. So I know it sounds like we're very high on him compared to consensus. I mean, his ADP used to be way lower than that. I still think if you're following our rankings over there on Patreon, I mean, you're going to be coming away with Robert Woods in a ton of fantasy drafts. But I mean, that's what I want. I want you, if you're looking at those rankings, to be drafting Robert Woods because he is, if not my favorite wide receiver target this year, one of them. So now a player that we actually had to move up our Patreon rankings earlier today is going to be Cooper Kupp. Okay, so Cooper Kupp, I have to admit, we were too low on. And a big change in why we moved up Cooper Kupp is as we went through and we read through that draft guide, just trying to see if there were any adjustments that we could be making to our rankings based on our research that we had. I mean, I noticed that we were baking in way too much value into the touchdown efficiency that we had for Kupp and Woods. And I think that a lot of people who've been telling me in the YouTube comment section over the past few weeks were right. I mean, y'all were telling me that if I was going to be that high on Robert Woods, I had to be very high on Cooper Kupp at the same time. You were right. I was wrong. And that's why I always encourage you to go to the comment section, give me your opinion, because a lot of times, I mean, y'all are able to change my mind. And here, a big thing changing my mind is we go through and we look at Cooper Kupp in 2020. Now, yes, he finishes as the wide receiver 30 in points per game. But a big reason for this is a collapse in his touchdowns per game, but the volume is still there. Now, I talk about this all the time. What you want to do in fantasy is you chase volume, volume, volume. You fade efficiency, and that's exactly what we have here with Cooper Kupp. Because you go through, you look at the past 3 seasons. I mean, Cooper Kupp in 2018, about 7 targets a game. In 2019, slightly over 8. And in 2020, also over 8 targets a game. Now, the difference here between his finishes going from a high-end wide receiver 2 to a mid wide receiver 1 all the way down in 2020 to a wide receiver 3 is the fact that his touchdown rate just collapsed. I mean, in 2018, he was scoring 0.75 touchdowns a game. In 2019, he was scoring a little over half a touchdown a game. And in 2020, that collapsed to 0.2. So I think we can expect that to go up. And like I said, this is an offense that should be very pass happy. Cooper Kupp already getting 8 targets a game. So I think the transition over to Stafford and more of a passing attack is really going to help this overall offense. So now our next player is Tyler Higbee. And Tyler Higbee, I understand, guys. I mean, I was talking about him at the beginning of this offseason, and I was saying if you're doing best ball drafts, I mean, you need to draft Tyler Higbee in every single one because he was a ridiculous value, especially after Gerald Everett left Los Angeles. Now, I mean, the people at Underdog are too sharp. I mean, you do not have that edge anymore. Or if you pull up the Underdog ADP, I mean, Tyler Higbee is currently going in a range where I thought we were going to be aggressively drafting him to now I think he's actually in a void. I think that we aggressively target Robert Woods. I think we aggressively target Cooper Kupp. And let me explain this with Tyler Higbee. So first off, actually, let me take us back real quick. I want to remind everyone, if you were following this channel last offseason, Tyler Higbee was a player that I hated. So don't make it seem like I just love Tyler Higbee because I liked his price earlier this offseason when he was significantly cheaper. But the reason that we liked Tyler Higbee when he was significantly cheaper than this was because of the quarterback upgrade with Matthew Stafford. And at the same time, because Gerald Everett was leaving. So he was going to be getting more targets from a better quarterback. And that's a recipe for success. But now you actually look at him on Underdog. And Tyler Higbee is being drafted behind TJ Hawkinson, Dallas Goedert as the 2 top tight ends ahead of him. Now, TJ Hawkinson being drafted like 4 rounds ahead of him, so don't think they're close at all. But Dallas Goedert, Tyler Higbee, kind of in the same range. And my big problem is now Tyler Higbee has jumped both Logan Thomas and Noah Fant in tight end ADP. Now, personally, I can't get behind taking Tyler Higbee above either one of those tight ends. So while I love this offense, while I thought that we were going to be significantly higher on Tyler Higbee than most people, I think that Higbee is one piece that I went from kind of liking at his price to now I think it's a little bit too rich. I think it's very similar to last year where we are going to be avoiding. Now, our last player we're going to talk about, I saved him for last for a reason, will be Darrell Henderson. Now, we probably need to get this video out very soon because, I'm over here just waiting for the Los Angeles Rams to make a move to go get a running back and pair him with Darrell Henderson. Because right now, Darrell Henderson is the only running back on this roster that was not drafted in the 7th round or was not signed as an undrafted free agent. Now, I understand that means that it looks like Darrell Henderson's going to be a 3-down bell cow running back right now for Los Angeles. But in reality, that's not what it means. What it means is this team's bringing in another guy. We don't know if it's going to be for depth. We don't know if it's going to be to get the starting job. That's 100% something we're going to have to be on the lookout for over the next 3 weeks or so. And with Henderson, if they bring in a guy like a Le'Veon Bell, if they bring in an Adrian Peterson, I'm not worried at all. I am rooting for them to do that. And I think Henderson would be a fine pick at his current ADP. Now, what I'm worried about is I'm worried about them potentially going out there and trading for a player. I'm worried about them going and trading for a James Robinson, a Melvin Gordon, a player like Kareem Hunt. And I know a lot of people are saying in the comment section, well, Mason, this team traded away all their first-round picks. This team traded away their second-round picks. What are they going to give for those running backs? Guys, I don't know how to break this news to you, but the NFL does not value running backs like that. The asking price for a Kareem Hunt, the asking price for a James Robinson would never in a million years be a first or second round draft pick. That simply doesn't happen. Jonathan Taylor last year was drafted in the 2nd round on a very cheap deal. So why are an NFL team, or are they going to go out there and they're going to see a veteran running back like a Kareem Hunt on a veteran contract that's more expensive and be willing to pay a first round pick for him? No, that's not the asking price. Nobody would think that's actually going to happen. The asking price for these running backs is going to be significantly cheaper. I'd imagine Kareem Hunt is about a 3rd round pick attached to a day 3 pick as well. So maybe a 3rd and a 4th. I'd imagine that a James Robinson is just a 3rd. I'd imagine that a Melvin Gordon is literally a 5th round pick at this point, given his contract. And I know it's crazy to say. I know a lot of people don't agree with that. But I promise you guys, if you look at the recent history of running back moves, running backs simply aren't valued in today's age of the NFL. Look at the 2020 NFL draft where DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers all went in the 2nd round. That is very notable in trying to determine what this team would have to pay to go get one of those guys. And for now, we actually do have Darrell Henderson as our running back 24 in our rankings, essentially saying, well, if they bring in only a Frank Gore or Le'Veon Bell, we'll probably move him up a spot or two. We'll probably move him up to 23, 22, depending on how things shake out. But if they go out there and they trade for someone, if they go trade for a Kareem Hunt, you better believe that Darrell Henderson's falling below this. So it's very hard for me to give you an official take on Darrell Henderson right now. Of course, we have all our rankings updated over there on Patreon, where we currently do have Darrell Henderson as the running back 24. But yeah, thank you, my dudes, for checking out this video. And like I said, there's nothing you can do that would support this channel more than going to the description of the video, going to the comment section, using that link to join us on drafts on Underdog, using promo code FLOCK to get free money to do so. And at the same time, you're getting our 2021 draft guide when you actually go through and join. So thank you, my dudes. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video and have a great day. We've gotten a ton of new members joining the flock. Thank you, Grind for Gold, Devin, Bungified, Brian, Brody, Victor, Chris, Grant, Trevor, and David. Thank you, my dudes.